looks a deep one for the end zone. Phelan is down there. Oh, he got it! He got it! He got it! Touchdown! Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan.
What's going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 67 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can always follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Presented, as always, by Talk Loud Radio, coming at you live every Tuesday and Friday night, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. And, of course, we are live on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, Twitch, you name it. We're pretty much everywhere. And we're streaming in the Going For Two app, which is free for iOS and Android. All right, guys, today is our first Dynasty edition of the show. The season is officially over with, at least for us. Obviously, the playoffs are still going on, but the season that we love so much is actually over. So we're going to do some Dynasty talking tonight. Unfortunately, our normal co-host, Mr. Ryan, could not come on tonight. So to replace him, I had to bring on two guys. Some big shoes to fill. So the first guy we got coming on is Mr. Jason Katz. He's a returning guest. He comes from fantasypros.com. Jason, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing great. Happy to be here. Been a long time.
Been a long time. Yeah, I think preseason. I think it's the last time we had you on, man. Glad to have you back on. All right. And the other guest, of course, we got, he's also a returning guest. Came on during the preseason as well. Mr. Rick Rosen. He hosts the YouTube show, The Checkdown, on YouTube. You can just go to YouTube and just Google The Checkdown. He'll come up. Rick, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm pretty good. Hey, we haven't done a show since the summer. Can you tell my tan faded a little bit?
Yeah, you're looking a little more pale.
Thanks. Don't mention it again.
All right. Good stuff, guys. All right, so before we get into it, I haven't talked to either one of y'all in a while. How did your fantasy seasons go? Jason, we'll go to you first.
It was one of the worst, if not the worst year I've ever had. I had a team go 13-0. Did not win a championship, did not make a championship for the first time in my 16-year fantasy career.
Ouch.
Basically, in week 14 or 15, you name an elite player that I had on my team, they put up their season low. Not just season low, but I'm talking by 6, 7, 8 points, their season low. Antonio Brown and Todd Gurley on the same team? Nope, not good enough.
Oof.
So that was the way my playoffs went. But the regular season was pretty good.
All right, let me hit the hang-up button on Jason there, because he's no longer an expert anymore.
He took away his fantasy card.
All right, Rick, how you doing over there? How was your season this year?
I'm much better here and after how Jason's season went. I tied my wagon to Andrew Luck and Melvin Gordon as much as I could, so my seasons went pretty well, except for the week when Luck faced the Cowboys and Gordon was out. So if that wasn't the wild card week, I was advancing, and so I made the finals in 2 leagues. 1 league, I didn't win the finals in either. It was a Mahomes team in both leagues. And 1 league, I did this brand new payout system where we split the pot equally, and then it was $2 for each point that you win by, and I lost by almost 100 points.
Wow.
Yeah, it backfired on me.
That
Being
is
innovative
crazy.
isn't always better, Jeff.
Are you sure it was worse than mine? Mine was worse?
You got to be there to understand. You got to be there.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm actually a sit start away from a dynasty championship this year. I stupidly started Corey Davis over Kenny Galladay in a bad matchup for Galladay. Thought I'd put Corey Davis in there. Lost by 10 points. Of course, Galladay went bonkers in that Week 15 game. So had I started him, I would have been to the championship game, and my team in the championship game actually scored more points than the eventual winner. So I'm basically a 1 sit start away from a championship in my dynasty league. I did beat one of my redraft leagues, though. I won one of my redraft leagues, so I was happy about that. So, all right.
I made the wild card in Scott Fishbowl. That was a big deal for me personally.
Nice. I actually just missed that. The guy that actually won most points and went undefeated the whole season was in my division. So
nice.
a little bit of a
scores were ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. It was my first Superflex league, so I was kind of learning the ropes there a little bit. So like I said, I just missed. I was like the team right below making it in. So next year, hopefully, I get in there and I'll do much better next year.
Superflex the best. You got to get on that more.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan coming into the season, but I think I kind of like it now. It makes things a little more interesting. I wasn't into the two QB thing, but I think I do like it now.
More points, more fun.
Yep, exactly. All right, let's get into some of these coaching changes here. Sort of speaking from a fantasy perspective, Jason, we'll go to you first, too. Which of these coaching moves that we've had so far in the offseason are you most excited about for fantasy purposes?
I mean, I'm going to get to it more a little later when we go into our main program, but it's got to be Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that this is an excellent hire. I don't know. He's unproven. He was fired from, I think it was Texas Tech. So I'm not sure he's going to be great. What I do know is he can't possibly be worse.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Definitely. What about you, Rick? Which coaching change are you most excited about for fantasy purposes?
Well, I think the best move might have actually been a non-move, and that was the Browns retaining Freddie Kitchens. You know, the coach-quarterback relationship is so important, and the Browns were a completely different team once Freddie Kitchens took the reins on offense. This is a guy that was a positional coach, never a coordinator in his NFL career. Now he's a head coach, and I'm excited to see what the Browns are going to do. They have just a ton of talent. It's awesome for fantasy.
Yeah, definitely. I saw someone tweet out, and I don't know, maybe it was one of you guys, but
nope.
How many fantasy teams are going to have the Baker and Kitchens name in their name? You know what I mean?
I saw that tweet as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of the more popular fancy names this year. Mm-hmm. All right. Yes, I think the one I'm most excited about is for selfish reasons. I actually own Mike Evans in one of my leagues, so
nice.
The hiring of Bruce Arians, obviously in Tampa. I know they had a really good offense this year already, so it's hard to improve on that offense anymore, but I do think that to be more downfield passing. I think Evans has another monster season, who had a career season this year. I think he has another monster season next year with Bruce Arians, and I'm excited to see what Jameis Winston can do actually, in this new offense, a coach that believes in him, and see what he can do for Bruce Arians there.
Love that.
All right. Let's talk about Antonio Brown a little bit. I know it's kind of an old story, but we've heard, Antonio Brown could be getting traded. Even so far as the president coming out, Art Rooney, saying that he's open to trading Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown then tweets out a picture of him and Art Rooney, which with no comment, no nothing really, just a picture of him. Kind of I don't know if it was like thrown in his face or what the case was. What are y'all feelings about Antonio Brown? And if you own him in a dynasty league, what are you doing with him, Jason?
I have said this from the start. I will stand by this position. If I'm proven wrong, it is what it is. I think Antonio Brown is playing football in Pittsburgh this year. He is the best wide receiver in football. He has been for 5 years now. I do not see them trading him. And actually, I know we're going to get into this later again, but I think Antonio Brown is actually a buy in Dynasty. He is 31 years old, and people are going to sell him thinking, oh, well, he's 31, 32, 33, he's done. No, he's not. He's going to age very well. His decline will be gradual. He will not decline like someone like Andre Johnson. It will be much slower than most. He can probably play until 36, 37 at a pretty high level.
All right, good stuff there. Rick, what do you feel about Antonio Brown?
I agree with a lot of things Jason said. I think Antonio Brown's one of the best receivers in the league. I definitely think he's a buy low candidate if you're a dynasty team looking to win in the next 2 or 3 years. And if you're a seller, this isn't the right time to sell, obviously. His name's in the dirt. But the Steelers are at the tail end of this quarterback dynasty, and it just feels like it would be stupid to dump AB at the end of the Roethlisberger era when he's a huge reason for the Steelers' success in the past few years. And you look at Le'Veon Bell's almost surely gone. So losing 2 huge assets to your offense, and, they're talking about Munchak leaving. That's the offensive linemen are so much happier when he's around. You're talking about a dramatic drop in talent for the Steelers next year if these changes happen. So it's interesting to see. We love the thing about the media news cycle is when we can get a big player on the trade block, we can go nuts for days and days, and the outrage machine gets a downhill roll and starts to snowball, and that's tons of fun. But the likely scenario is he stays.
All right, well, see, I'm on the opposite side of the fence than both of you. I don't think he's in Pittsburgh next year, and I'll tell you why. Pittsburgh has kind of shown over the years that they don't put this kind of crap. I mean, you come in there and you hold out for a contract, they're just not going to give you that contract. And they've done it before, not just with Le'Veon Bell. They've done it in the past with receivers, ended up letting them go, letting them walk. Now with AB, it's a little bit different because you can't really let him walk. You're going to have to trade him. So they will get some assets back. I just don't think Pittsburgh and the type of team that they are with their character and everything else that's kind of happened with Antonio Brown, they're just going to kind of go, okay, you want to get traded? We're going to trade you away. We'll get some assets for the future, and you're not bigger than the team. Where I think if you had a team like let's say like the Browns over the previous few years who had Josh Gordon, they really didn't have much else going for them. They pretty much had to put up with Josh Gordon's bullshit over the seasons that he had all those issues. Whereas Antonio Brown with the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've been a winning team, forever. And they just kind of, they just do business as usual. And I just think Antonio Brown throwing a wrench in there is just not going to sit well with the owners. And I think he's gone at some point this season, at offseason. I think he's being traded.
I don't think the Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon comparisons are exactly fair when you think about A, Brown's work rate, B, how Gordon was kept off the field, and C, how this whole thing played out with Brown just piecing out on the Steelers at the end of the season. I do think that you're right. The Steelers, my favorite example of Steelers no BS management is LeGarrette Blount walking off the field during Monday Night Football a few years ago. Bang, cut immediately on the Patriots, wins a title. It's a real rags to riches story for Mr. Blount. But for me, it's all about the price. What would you pay to get AB on your NFL team? Like you said, he is 31, and while that doesn't affect, to me, his ceiling talent because he works so hard, you can see the wear and tear as he's missed time to injuries each of the last 2 seasons. So what would you pay for an Antonio Brown?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, teams that have the assets, you have to pay a lot for him, obviously. I think the Steelers probably want a lot for him. It'll be tough to trade him. I just don't see how he can come back after what they've gone through and just sort of show up to camp on, in August and be like, okay, nothing's wrong. Let's get back to work. Let's do this. And, he kind of quit on his team because that final game was a big game. You know what I mean? They had to win that game to get into the playoffs, and they didn't win it, and he was on the field. And we saw how the team kind of turned on Le'Veon Bell when he's holding out for that contract. I think the team kind of turned on him. I don't think there's any way he goes back to that locker room without any kind of animosity. I just think the Steelers won't do it. I think he's gone somewhere. Not sure where, but I think he's gone. All right, let's talk about it. Go ahead, Rick.
It was Ben's fault. That's it.
It was Ben's fault. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that Ben's actually the real diva there. Maybe, I don't know. It's definitely a possibility. Quarterbacks can be divas as well, and I think he's kind of hiding behind that Steelers sort of, that sort of what am I looking for? The I can't think of the word right now, but he's standing behind that Steelers sort of tradition. That's what I'm looking for, and just kind of holding his own there. But I think Ben could be the one that is the issue, maybe, because I think Le'Veon Bell had an issue with Big Ben as well. Who knows? All right, let's talk about a rookie quarterback. Well, a soon-to-be rookie quarterback, a prospect, kind of made a little bit of noise on some social media recently. Dwayne Haskins, who was regarded as by many as the top quarterback in the NFL draft this year, in a very weak quarterback class for the NFL draft this year, but tweeted a picture of himself in a Giants uniform, and then also posted a few on Instagram with the Jags uniform, a Redskins uniform. This is sort of a new era. You don't ever usually see this kind of thing, before a player is actually in the NFL. Rick, what do you think of this whole situation? Not just from a fantasy perspective, but just overall in general with this whole, social media thing sort of affecting the draft.
Well, first of all, if aliens came down to Earth and they became infatuated with football and you explained to them how the NFL draft works, it was like, no. Players graduate and they don't get to choose what other system do you graduate or advance to the next level and not get to choose where you work for? It is an absolute insane concept, and it's antiquated, and we still work with it. Anyway, I love it. I love the reverse recruiting from Haskins because usually we see it with the negative. I don't want to play for San Diego was what Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger would all joke. But now it's, I want to play here. I want to play here. And that is exciting because when the match is right, when the player's happy, when the organization is happy, doesn't everybody win? Isn't that a better situation? Whether Haskins is the right pick for the Giants at 6 or otherwise remains to be seen. I'm kind of off. Ohio State just has so much talent on their team. It becomes really hard to decipher where a prospect lies.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I said, it's a very weak quarterback class. So he may raise in the draft just based on that alone because there's no competition really to compete with him. So he might just become that valuable commodity where he goes in the top 5, 6, 7 picks. Jason, what do you think about the whole situation?
He's a kid. I mean, he's posting pictures of himself on social media. That's what they do. I think that he posted the Giants one first, and then he may have posted the rest of them kind of to just be like, oh, wait a minute, I'm just posting this about all the teams. And I'm not really trying to pick one or the other. But, he's just having fun. It's not going to affect him at all.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I kind of like it. I like the sort of the way the fans can kind of get into this, where the social media kind of brings this whole situation closer. I like the way that, obviously he went back and deleted the text, so somebody probably got to him and said, hey, take this down because it's not good publicity. But I don't know. I think I liked it. And I hope it continues. I hope he kind of opens the door for a little bit more of this sort of open door sort of policy where they kind of let the players kind of think out on their own without having this media sort of pressure them to where they need to go in the draft.
how do these agents not have total control of the social medias of the athletes they represent by now? With these college kids, with these young players, we always find old tweets. We always find something irresponsible. Like, you're handling an entity worth millions of dollars, agent. Get the login, get push notifications, and handle your biz. I'm so sick of this.
Well, at the very least, go onto their Twitter and go back through their history and delete anything. Like the stuff with Josh Hader in baseball last year. I'm sure you may remember that. Yeah. How did no one go and delete that when he started becoming good?
Yeah.
Pay an intern.
Yep, exactly.
What?
It actually brings me to a great business decision that I had a while back. They need to design an app that for the agents that when they tweet anything out, before it goes to the public, it goes to their agent or their PR guy, and then they can either approve it or decline it right there. So that kind of takes care of the situation there. But, if someone builds that app, they'll probably be a millionaire because that would be the best thing they can do for these players.
That is so smart.
All right, let's do some buy low and sell high, guys. I know this is a Dynasty podcast. We're going to think of some guys that, may have ended the season kind of bad that you can probably buy low. Or some guys that ended the season on a high note that we can sell high. Jason, we'll start with you with one of your buy lows. Who you got?
Well, I already mentioned Antonio Brown, so I'll pivot to somebody else here. I'm going to go with Kenny Golladay. I know you mentioned him. And he finished the season on a strong note. And I still think he's a buy low because I think he's viewed as like a wide receiver 2 long term. And I think he's a wide receiver 1 with the elite, not Calvin Johnson type upside, but on that level of dominance going forward. He established himself this year as the number 1 in Detroit. He won't be easy to acquire. This is a guy that saw 8+ targets 9 times in 2018. The Lions' offense really can't be worse, and he was still very productive. He's going to take the next step next year, and he can be an asset on your team for 7, 8 years.
Yeah, I hope you're right because I do have him in my Dynasty League, and I actually traded for him last year, believe it or not. I pulled a trade off to get him before he kind of became a big commodity, and I see the same thing you see. I think he's going to be an elite number 1 receiver, and you're right. You probably can buy him a little low right now because the owners, having him on my team, I know that he had some weeks where he was terrible. And that's why I benched him in that Week 15 matchup. I think it was against Buffalo. Because I was like, Tre'Davious White's a great cornerback. He's going to be on Golladay. I'm not going to play him. And then of course he lights up Tre'Davious White, and Corey Davis gets shut down. So I'm like, what do I know? But yeah, I agree. That could definitely be a good buy low. What about you, Rick? Who you got for a buy low?
Oh, I got someone flashy. I got someone less. I've been staring at my names trying to decide who I want to start off with, but I'm going to go big. And this was a guy that I was so high on going into the season, and he ended the season fading into absolute obscurity, and it was so sad. And it's David Johnson, right? David Johnson went into the year with the highest ceiling humanly possible, right? He was coming off a wrist injury, so it's not like his body's deteriorating. He just had a bad season. What we were going to say his downfall was going to be a Mike McCoy scheme, and his downfall was absolutely a Mike McCoy scheme. He was running over the center more than any running back in the league, and his volume just wasn't there. He had a game this year with 12 catches for 8 yards, if I'm not mistaken. Like, just one of the ugliest productivity seasons from an elite running back that we could ever imagine. But Kingsbury has the potential to turn it all around because as much as scheme was David Johnson's downfall, it could be the reason that he has an insane bounce back. He's still hyper athletic. That line was bottom 10. It'll improve. Josh Rosen develops. Josh Rosen's debut was a 2-minute drill against the Bears. Like, the Cardinals were given absolutely no chance to succeed under Steve Wilkes. So we can only go up from here. And David Johnson has plummeting value. That team is going to be regarded as one of the worst with some real upside next year. And if you believe like I do in David Johnson as merely an athletic talent who can do great things with the football, then he's someone you might want to look after.
Yeah, I know this is a Dynasty podcast, but I think that David Johnson, when it's all said and done in redraft for 2019, he's going to creep back toward that 12 to 15 range.
Interesting.
In drafts. I think he's going to end up right up there.
Oh, well.
I think this is going to be one of the more interesting first rounds when we get, I don't want to make this like pivot to redraft. Sorry, Jeff.
No,
but just when you think about the things that have happened this season with multiple elite running backs stepping into the fray, not only that, the whole meta draft of we were going RB heavy. Now it's going to come back around to wide receivers as you got guys putting up game breaking performances each week. You throw in Mahomes 50 touchdowns. It's a total outlier. flyer. I think the first 15 picks next year are going to be completely fascinating. Travis Kelce's viable top 15 next year. It's going to be so interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I love that. I love that call as well, because I actually had David Johnson in a redraft league, and he pretty much killed my fantasy year with his. You know, he ended up being, I think, an RB2, but when you drafted him, you weren't.
He was an RB1. He finished as the RB12 in PPR.
Really? So he just snuck
despite
in.
how bad he was, he still was an RB1. Now,
the catch volume.
Yeah, he was an RB1 in terms of, like, he barely got there, and I think he scored 11 points fewer per game than he scored in 2016, so he certainly was far, far worse. But he was still, he didn't destroy your season, like someone, like if you drafted Le'Veon Bell and didn't have James Conner.
Right, yep, good call. Yeah. Good call. But yeah, I get that. Definitely buy low. I think I'm in my dynasty league. The guy that owns David Johnson's already kind of shopping him around, see if anybody's going to bite on him. So yeah, you're right. That now's the time to buy him for sure. All right, so my buy low that I'm gonna start off with, I'm gonna go with a guy that he ended up terrible. I mean, he started the season great. I think he had 6 touchdowns in the first 5 games, and then he got traded, and it went all downhill from there. And that's Carlos Hyde, if you can believe it. He had a great start to the season with the Browns. I think at one point led the league in touchdowns, early in the season. And then Nick Chubb sort of bust on the scene, and the Browns were like, all right, what do we need to do here? Fournette gets hurt in Jacksonville. They're like, all right, let's ship Carlos Hyde over to Jacksonville. Everyone's thinking, oh, Carlos Hyde's going to be the Fournette fill-in. It doesn't really work out that way. He has a pretty terrible season from there on out. Doesn't score the rest of the season. But I think he's going to end up somewhere else next year. I actually predicted in one of my bold predictions that he's going to go to Buffalo. And I think he kind of replaces Shady McCoy up there in Buffalo. And I think he ends up being an RB2, for a guy that's basically been written off. I think he can have the talent to be an RB2. He's still pretty young. Not a lot of tread on the tires because he's been, hurt a couple years. And then, of course, in Jacksonville, he sat behind Fournette when he did finally come back. So I think I like Carlos Hyde for a buy low. What do y'all think of that?
That's a real sneaky call, and I kind of like it too, assuming he's not in Jacksonville. If he's in Jacksonville behind Fournette, then obviously that's going to be a huge flop. If he can get out of there and get himself not necessarily into a starting role, but at least like a 50-50 timeshare, I think he's good enough where he can put up maybe 8 touchdowns on a good team. Right,
and I think you can get him now for almost nothing, really. I mean, I think you could just offer the owner of Carlos Hyde just basically anything you want, and he's basically going to have to give him up because I think his value is so low right now.
All right, that's how I feel about that. I feel like it's a next to nothing move. It's really going to cost you nothing, and if you believe, then it's really could pay off for you.
Agreed. All right, Rick, let's stay with you. Let's go with one of your sell highs. Anybody that you're looking at that you're trying to get rid of off some of your teams?
Yeah, a guy that I think could sell high who absolutely burst onto the scene, and he became a fan favorite, but the team doesn't really have a lot of equity in him. Is Philip Lindsay. And Philip Lindsay was real boom or bust when he got going earlier in the season. And the Broncos have an identity crisis on offense. They don't know if they're going to stick with Case Keenum. But we do know is that they invested in Royce Freeman. They invested in a high pick, and they're going to run the ball. And I just don't believe that Philip Lindsay is the down-to-down guy between the tackles that they want to hitch a ride to. That being said, Philip Lindsay's a rookie Pro Bowler. So his value is incredible right now, and there is always going to be a rookie running back that bursts onto the scene. As talented as he may have been this season, he is very much de jure and replaceable. I think his name is one that's going to jump out in people's mind right now, but as the summer wears on, he'll become more and more forgettable. I'd probably dump him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think his value is as high as it's going to get right now. And the hiring of Vic Fangio to the Broncos, he's a defensive guy. They're going to want to run the ball. Obviously he could run the ball, but Lindsey's more of a sort of that third down, back where he's going to get a lot of passes out of the backfield. I don't see Vic Fangio playing that kind of game. I think he's going to, depend on his defense. He's going to probably give Royce Freeman a lot more carries than he does Philip Lindsay. I think the timeshare kind of shifts back to Royce Freeman, who at the beginning of the season actually was more efficient than Lindsay was, with the carries that he got. And obviously now towards the end of the season, Lindsay got more carries. He got, a lot more yards, a lot more touchdowns. So it ended up being skewed. But I actually owned Freeman in a dynasty league, and I kind of watched that, and he was very efficient with what he had. And he was that touchdown guy. He may only had 8-9 carries, but he had a touchdown and 30 or 40, 50 yards. So yeah, I could definitely see that for sure. I like that call.
And I don't want to hear Philip Lindsay as a PPR option because Royce Freeman went to Oregon. Dude can catch the ball. He was an all-down, all-purpose back in college.
Agreed. All right, Jason, what you got for a sell high?
I'm going to go a little controversial here, and I'm going to throw out Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
Wow, supporting me immediately.
Yeah.
I love it. Hear me out here. All right? I'm not suggesting you give away Mike Thomas for free, by no means. But people view him like he's this alpha wide receiver one. Once again, comparing like the Calvin Johnson level. They view him on the same level as like Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. And I saw some early ADPs for 2019, and he's going like second or third receiver off the board. And I think that's absolutely insane. They look at someone like Tyreek Hill or Juju Smith-Schuster and think that they're boom bust. Michael Thomas was one of the most volatile receivers in football this year. He finished outside the top 36 5 times this season and had 2 more weeks outside the top 24. The problem with Thomas is, and I would also throw someone like Keenan Allen to this group, is they need volume to produce. And in fantasy, I don't want guys that need volume. I love the volume. I'm happy to take it. But Michael Thomas is never, and I mean never, giving you a week-winning game with fewer than 10 catches. Like a 4 for 75 and a 1 touchdown game, that's not in his repertoire. He'll have games where he gives you 12 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's great, and I love that. But I want players that can produce unlimited volume and also produce with volume.
Yep, that's
he's being considered the top 3 wide receiver. I think he's more of like a wide receiver in the maybe 9 to 12 range. So it's more about selling him higher than his actual value because his perceived value is greater.
I agree 100%. Now, I want to sort of give that caveat because I know what you're trying to get at. You know, people hear us talking about sell high. They're like, oh, I need to sell Michael Thomas. Doesn't mean go out and sell him, but if you can get a good, if you get a Lions share here, a big trade where you can get his value super high and sort of pull a lot of assets in, go ahead and do it. I think that's a good point there. I think he's one of those guys that, he had a huge season when you look at his total numbers, but you're right. He had those, up and down sort of weeks where he was huge one week and then next week he wasn't so big. So yeah, good call on that one. The one I'm going to go with is going to be controversial as well. We kind of talked about him a little bit already. And that's Patrick Mahomes. 50 touchdown season. Everybody's, loving Patrick Mahomes. He's the next, the next Peyton Manning, the next, Andrew Luck, whatever. But when you really look at it, in fantasy, unless you're playing in 2 quarterback leagues, that quarterback, even the number 1 quarterback, is not that much higher than the number 2, the number 3, the number 4 quarterback. The difference in quarterbacks just isn't enough for me to value Mahomes as high as he's probably going to be valued at. And I think if I have another decent option, let's say I have Andrew Luck, which is quite possible because Mahomes basically was for free this year. If I have a guy like Andrew Luck and someone I can stake my dynasty league on and who's just as good as a quarterback, and I can sell Mahomes at this super high rate right now and, pull in, whether it be draft picks, whether it be a top tier running back, whatever the case may be, I think I'm pulling the trigger on that one. What do y'all think of that?
I think the issue with Mahomes is people think that they're getting this again. And sure, Mahomes is certainly capable of doing this again. He's already shown us he can. But in all likelihood, what if he has like a 40 touchdown season next year? That's great. This is someone that's going to be drafted this year, probably in the mid to late 2nd round. And as much as I do think he'll be the QB1 again, but maybe not. I don't know. He was worth it this year. But you can't assume you're getting that again. And something that Rick said earlier, it's like Philip Lindsay. His value will never be higher.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Rick, what do you think about Patrick Mahomes sell high? You agree with that or no?
I do agree with that. And I thought about including him on my list earlier today, but I didn't want to get laughed at. And I feel great that we can all come to some common ground here on our hot takes. But the thing about the Chiefs is you're right. This is as good as it's going to get. And I'm a big believer in putting out film, right? Patrick Mahomes completely torched the NFL for the first 2, 3, 5 weeks of the season when we had no idea what we're dealing with. Now you have to limit big plays against Mahomes. You have to keep him in the pocket. You have to put some extra pressure on him to make him uncomfortable or he will completely demolish you with deep throws and unbelievable plays. So it's realistic for me to sell Mahomes. It's all about what you're getting, of course, because why not just strap in your QB1 for the next 10 years? So make sure you're getting something that really improves part of your roster if you do want to sell Mahomes. But the thing about him is he's a young player that will also help you win now. So in Dynasty, he's exactly the kind of guy you want. So we're putting him in the sell high, but only sell high if someone really wants him and is willing to overpay because they think they're going to get not 50, but 55 next year.
Right.
And you could pitch it to him on him, right? Someone can get into that. But personally, I'm not that kind of guy that's going to overpay for Mahomes or a quarterback ever.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough because Jeff touched on it before, but it's so important for people to understand that when we say sell high, we are not telling you that you must sell these players. Yeah. It's only if somebody is going to overpay. When you have assets like Mahomes, and like Michael Thomas that are viewed as elite assets, you need to get more than what they're worth.
Mm-hmm. 100% agree. 100% agree. All right, let's go back around the room and do another round here. We'll start with a buy low, and we'll go to you, Rick. What you got for your next buy low?
Well, Jeff, tight end was one of the most controversial positions of the season. It was a bleep show for most of the year. But one name emerged that completely it was a droppable early in the year with major fantasy relevance late in the year. And that was some underlying circumstances. But I think Evan Engram is a real talent that could have real future value. Once the Giants came off of their bye, Pat Shurmur got something to click with that offense, whether it was protection schemes or release times, but everybody became more effective, including Eli Manning. And once Odell stepped out, Evan Engram became the biggest beneficiary of some of these positive changes. He's an athlete. He would have an even better season if he didn't have some dropsies early on. But once he can complete everything and really grow as an NFL player, I think he could be a huge asset. And once again, he's irrelevant in terms of elite tight end talent.
Yeah, I may have come on this show and said it, but I certainly said it many times in the offseason this year. I was all in on Evan Engram. Obviously, that did not work out in 2018. But I mean, that has to do with the coaching and the scheme, not the player. Evan Engram cannot be covered. He literally can't. He's lining up against linebackers. This guy has 90th percentile metrics across the board. He's just a super athlete.
Yeah.
If they just learn how to use him right, he can be the next dominant tight end in the league, up there with Kelsey and Ertz.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, you talked about how bad the tight end position was this year. I think Evan Engram ended up, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, is he tight end number 6 this year, I believe, even with that terrible season?
Tight end was so bad. If you give me about 10 seconds, I'll be able to pull this up here. Obviously, I'm going to go by average, which is what we have to go by here. Engram, 8. He finished tight end 8. 10 games played. 10.5 fantasy points per game in PPR. He was the tight end 8.
Yep. It's crazy. That's crazy. That's how bad that position was.
So he's not even really a buy low. He's a freaking tight end 1.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, the tight end position was so bad this year. I mean, basically, if you didn't have Kelsey, Ertz, Kittle
and Ebron, baby.
Ebron, that's pretty much it. That was it. Those are the elite tight ends. Kind of crazy to think that.
Kelsey and Ertz were up top. Kittle was very, very far below Kelsey and Ertz, a full 3 points per game below them. And then your Jared Cook, 1.5 points per game below Kittle. Sorry, Ebron, 1.5 points per game below Kittle. And then it just dropped off from there. Cook, LJ Howard, Gronk, Evan Engram. It was really bad.
Yep.
Gronk was 7 and Evan Engram was 8.
Yes.
Yep.
Tight end was a mess, Jeff.
It was a mess. It was terrible. All right, Jason, what you got for your next buy low?
All right. I'm going to go stay in the hometown here and go with Robbie Anderson. Now, if I am ultimately wrong and the unthinkable happens, which I think is a very low percentage, and Antonio Brown does get traded to the Jets, you can throw this out the window. But for now, Robbie Anderson, I think he's the number 1 in a rising offense, new coach, Sam Darnold. I'm not sold on Sam Darnold as this franchise quarterback yet, but he did start to really break out toward the end of the season. And if he can continue on that, if he can grow, Robbie Anderson in the final 3 weeks, his snap count, 97%, 92%, 100%. So they went all in on Robbie Anderson, and I think that carries over into next year. And he can be a legitimate wide receiver 2 with high-end 2 upside. I don't think he can be a 1, but he may trade as like a 3 right now, and you can obviously sell, they're the Jets. You don't want a Jets receiver, and possibly get him for cheaper than he's worth.
Yeah, I love that call. Actually, I think there's I do DFS as well, and we look at a lot of targets as, sort of our telltale sign of a player you want to have in your DFS lineup. And I want to say it was like week 13, 14, and 15. Over those 3 games, he had 36 total targets, which is a ridiculous number for any receiver. If he gets that kind of volume and with that kind of big playability, I definitely can see where he can be a top end wide receiver 2 next year. Darnold really didn't look for him in the beginning of the season, but then as the season progressed, he started looking for him more and more often. So I love that call. I think his week 17 or week 16 game was not very good. So definitely, I think he's one of those buy low candidates for sure.
Air yards monster.
Yes, definitely, 100%. All right, let's see. My next buy low guy actually goes kind of hand in hand with one of my bold predictions, so I'll kind of do both here together. And that's going to be Tyrell Williams for the Chargers. I think
I like it.
He's not with the Chargers next year. He's a free agent, so he's probably going to go elsewhere. I think Mike Williams steps into the number 2 role for the Chargers. My bold prediction was that he was going to go to the Indianapolis Colts and be the number 2 receiver next to T.Y. Hilton, and would actually end up the season as a number 2 wide receiver in fantasy as well. Tyrell, they call him Tyrell the Gazelle. He can just flat out fly. I think you put him next to T.Y. Hilton and they become uncoverable. And you got Andrew Luck, the Colts, who basically threw the ball second most times in the league. Only the Steelers threw the ball more. You got that kind of volume. I think the 3 receivers behind T.Y. Hilton, what was it, like Charles Rogers and
Chester Rogers, Inman, and Ryan Grant.
Yeah, just not very.
Don't forget
inspiring.
about my boy Pascal.
Yeah, Pascal as well. Yeah, so I think if Tyrell Williams does end up going somewhere else in a pass-heavy offense, if it's not the Colts, it goes somewhere else. I think he's a wide receiver 2 next year, so I'm looking to get him wherever I possibly can.
I'd be thrilled to see him with Indianapolis. I've been a Tyrell believer since 2015 when he was buried in the Chargers depth chart. Man, I'd be so happy if he could finally break free.
Yep, definitely. I think he had one really good season where Keenan Allen was hurt, and we kind of saw what he can do with the number 1 role. So I think if he can go to somewhere like the Colts where they pass the ball a ton, he can definitely be a wide receiver, high end number 2, a low end number 1.
Secret selfish, I want the Colts to play more 12 personnel with Doyle and Ebron out on the field. So I agree, but, maybe they don't spread it out as much. I'd like them to mash it with that elite O-line, but you got Andrew Luck, you got to use them.
That's true. And then when they had both those guys healthy, they did run a lot of that personnel, and they had Doyle and Ebron. They were like a DFS nightmare because you had Doyle getting all the volume and you had Ebron getting the touchdowns, so you didn't know which one of these guys to pick. It was kind of a nightmare until Doyle went down. Of course, then it was all Ebron the rest of the season. So good call there. All right, let's do a couple sell highs now, and we'll go to you, Jason, this time first. Who you got for your next sell high?
I'm cheating a little bit. It's all of the Ravens running backs. So much like Alex Collins last year, Gus Edwards may be the starter entering 2019, but please do not fool yourselves into thinking he is some sort of long-term answer. I actually, in my rotoballer.com bold predictions column last year, I predicted that Alex Collins would not be the Ravens starting running back by the end of 2018, and that proved correct. I will say this, there is absolutely no chance that the Gus bus is still running in 2020. So combine that with the fact that Kenneth Dixon fumbles too much and he had those PED issues, and players typically when they have that, they don't really come back and produce, and especially for a guy that was never really anything to begin with. Ty Montgomery will never have fantasy value again. And I don't even think Collins will be on the team going into next season. I think he's going to get cut. Yep. He was just in the right place at the right time. I like the idea of owning a running back tethered to Lamar Jackson. I just don't think he's currently on the roster. Yeah,
that's a good call. And actually, Ryan, who's our co-host normally, he's a big Ravens fan. And I think he's with you on that, too. I think he said it before that the 2019 running back for the Ravens is not on the roster right now. So I agree there as well. So, yeah, definitely good call. Sell them while you can. I'm sorry. Was this a sell high? This is a sell high, right?
Sell,
This is sell high, yeah. So I'd love for them to get the kid from Iowa State.
Yeah, that's a good call there. I do like that as well. All right, Rick, what you got for your next sell high?
We're verging into guys that are not even necessarily that high, but did anyone finish the 2018 season higher than Derrick Henry? And if you have a dynasty league mate who is enamored with late season runs, then Derrick Henry is the ship of all Shippensburg out of your roster to see as much as you can get for him, because his workload will never be the same. His production never be the same. They like Deion Lewis. They like the other guy better. And, Mike Vrabel got his handpick of coordinators this year. He got Dean Pease and he got Matt LaFleur. Well, LaFleur was so good, he got a head coaching job somewhere else. So they're going to be looking for an OC again, and their offense wasn't that good this year. Marcus Mariota gets nerve damage twice in one season, and you can't feel half of his body heading into a playoff game. It's so hard to believe that team was one game away from the playoffs. This is the most bizarre team in the league. And, if they didn't blitz a ton, they wouldn't be anywhere on defense anyway. So Deion Lewis is much better for what they ultimately are, which is, it makes you a more dynamic offense. And Derrick Henry's just a bygone product. Hey, what about Derrick Henry for Baltimore?
Yeah, there you go.
He runs straight.
I'm playing Madden fantasy draft, it seems like a good fit.
That's a good call.
Hey, Derrick Henry runs straight. Go right ahead.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I watched a lot of Titans game because I had a lot of Derrick Henry shares this season, and the Titans had this amazing thing where they would line Derrick Henry up in a deep shotgun wildcat, run for 7 yards, and then bring the whole unit off the field and go back to just make Derrick Henry the quarterback. Just do that over and over again, and they didn't figure it out till December. I'm done.
I got a crazy stat for you on Derrick Henry. They had a stat. I forget what I was listening to a podcast.
I know what it is too. I might have posted the stat.
All right, go ahead. Tell me what your stat is, and I'll see if it's the same one.
I think it was that he scored more in weeks 13 to 17 than he did in weeks 1 through 12.
It wasn't that one, but that is a good one as well. That's definitely a good one because that big. I think it was at week 13. He had that 200 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah,
that's barely that crazy.
That game, the rest of the season, he scored more in his remainder of the season than he did the entire weeks 1 through 12. Which is, I mean, the guy was droppable, and now he's worked his way back into the 3rd round next year, and that's incredible and outrageous. And please don't draft him in the 3rd round.
Yes, agreed, 100% agree. The stat that I actually heard was actually pre-200 yard game, so this is before he kind of blew up in that last half of the season. Someone did a stat where it was like percentage of running backs, that carry the ball and get negative yards. So this is a percentage of negative yard carries. Derrick Henry was the number 1 back in getting positive yards on every single carry. Now, he may have just fallen down for a yard every single time, but he always got positive yards, which is kind of crazy to think about because as bad as he was in the beginning of the season, you wouldn't have thought that. But I think it was like 88% of his carries went for positive yards. Now, granted, he had that big season at the end of the season, and things kind of played out that way. But I just thought it was kind of interesting to see that Derrick Henry of all people would have been the one on the top of that list.
And that's so he's basically like a modern day Brandon Jacobs. You need 2, I'll get you 3.
Yeah.
You need 4, I'll get you 3.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's why success rate is so important as a rushing metric because I can't tell you how many times that guy fell 1 yard forward and 1 yard short.
Yep.
That's so classic.
But if he did that exclusively on third and 1 or 2, his success rate would be through the roof.
Through the roof. But that's when the Titans pass to keep you guessing.
Yep, exactly.
That's when you throw the slant to Corey Davis.
They'll run on 2nd and 10, but they'll throw on 3rd and 2.
No team ran more on 1st and 10 and 1st and 20 than the Titans this year.
Wow.
That's good coaching. And that's the offensive coordinator we'd be like in coaching Green Bay.
Ship him to the greatest quarterback of all time, please.
And let's give the ball to Jamal Williams.
Book it. Title down. Book it. I do think Jamal Williams is going to benefit from LaFleur because I think they like him better.
Really? Over Aaron Jones?
Yeah, I just think that Jamal Williams is a little bit more well-rounded. Ultimately, this is part of the thing that contributes to the power struggle, right? When Rodgers sits at his locker and says, we got to get Aaron Jones involved as much as possible, and Mike McCarthy's in the meeting room going, Jamal Williams blocks better, you piece of shit. So this is the kind of thing that starts day one when Rodgers goes to the media, but I don't see, listen, LaFleur loves 3 yards in a cloud of dust, so why wouldn't he like Jamal Williams?
I mean, you got a good point there. That's not good for the Packers then.
Yeah, good stuff there. Good stuff, guys. All right, let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to redraft the 2018 rookie draft for Dynasty, and then we're going to do some bold predictions to end the podcast, guys. You can hang out for a few minutes here, and we're going to run a quick commercial.
Fantasy football. It's not just a social interaction anymore. Today's manager plays to win, and the difference between winning and losing is so small, a manager will do whatever it takes to get an edge. Yet the other sites offer the same content at an extremely high cost. It's time to get away from the old and step into the future of fantasy stats. This is StatRoute. StatRoute allows you to find any data set for any player or team in 7 seconds or less, all on a simple, easy-to-use application. Want to see which running back performed best in the snow last season? How about the past 5 seasons? And in the fourth quarter? Or maybe you're unsure of which quarterback to start for the upcoming week. With our Stats IP technology, you can now quickly see how Matt Stafford has performed in the rain, during the second half of the season, in New York, compared with how Russell Wilson has played during primetime games, at home, versus the Rams' new defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips. At StatRoute, It's our mission to deliver state-of-the-art technology, guaranteed to keep you ahead of the curve. So, whether you're a casual football fan, a weekly fantasy trash talker, or a DFS hustler, we've got you covered. Welcome to the new standard for stats delivery. We are StatRoute. Take back your league.
This is it, what? Lucini pouring from the sky, let's get rich, what?
All right, guys, welcome back. I think I need to organize my buttons a little bit better there. I actually hit the wrong button again. I did it on my last podcast as well. Started the show over again, basically, with my drop there. But I'll get that organized. We'll get that fixed. Working the kinks out. It's now our off season, so I apologize for that. All right, guys, we're going to redraft the 2018 rookie draft. We're going to do the first 2 rounds. Basically, we'll just take turns. I'll go first, Jason second, and then Rick, you'll go third, and then we'll just keep rotating through. Obviously a lot of changes from what we actually drafted last year. So I want to kind of touch base on that and just talk about these rookies in general. I'll take the first pick here just because it's the most boring pick and easiest pick to make. It's Saquon Barkley. Obviously, broke all kinds of records. He was the usage monster. I think next to Christian McCaffrey, had more catches than any other running back. He was just a monster. If you drafted him, you are ecstatic. You got the best dynasty player right now in the league. Saquon Barkley, of course, goes number 1. Jason, who you got at number 2?
I think 1 and 2 are probably going to be consensus, and then it kind of gets tricky. So it'll be fun to see who Rick goes with. But I think number 2 has to be Nick Chubb.
Oh, snipes!
It's a running back league, and there's nothing more valuable in fantasy football than an elite running back. Not saying Chubb is an elite running back yet, but he's certainly showed signs. If he can get a little more work in the passing game, he can really ascend to that next level. So I'm definitely taking Chubb long term. Great spot in a rising offense tethered to Baker Mayfield.
Agreed, 100%. All right, 1.03. Who you got, Rick?
Listen, if your league has rules for guards, Quentin Nelson is an abs. I'm just kidding. There's just such a drop off in talent here. It feels like I'm getting less. But when I grab these 2 guys, I instantly have a strong base to stand on for years to come, even though one of them currently doesn't have a strong base to stand on. And that's Kerryon Johnson and Darius Geis. Johnson proved that he is the best running back in Detroit, and it's not even close. And he couldn't stay healthy at the end of the season, but it was obvious to anyone watching Detroit football that when he was getting the lion's share of the carries, Detroit was a better football team. You're coming off of Matthew Stafford's basement season. Jim Bob Cooter's out, so expect change. But Matt Patricia, old school football guy, practice outside even though you have a dome stadium football guy. Not the smartest, but definitely not smart enough to believe that running the football is still the optimal strategy. So expect a heavier dose of Kerryon Johnson moving forward. And I think Geis has the highest upside of anyone in this rookie draft, because we don't know what he could be. I think he looks sharp. I loved him in college. I'm a little worried about hearing that he had multiple procedures, but he seems positive. All I know about him is from seeing him on Twitter. I'm just kidding. I saw him in the preseason and in LSU. I really liked him. Very good producer, and I like Washington's offensive line when it stays healthy. I think Washington, a lot of ways, is just a couple of pieces away, and most of those pieces get hurt by October.
All right, good. So is your pick, hold on, I'm confused. Is it Kerryon Johnson or was it Darius Geis?
I think that he thinks we're doing like a snake draft, and he's going
we're
back
not
to
snake
back.
drafting?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, you got, nope. We can do that if you want. We're snake drafting through the 12th pick. So we'll go.
I'm drafting multiple teams here.
Yep. Sorry, I apologize.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, totally changes how I feel about it. I'm still going to take Kerryon Johnson, but that is funny. Okay.
Sorry about
Nobody
that.
take Geis.
No problem. All right, so we got Geis going at number 3. Oh, no, you said Kerryon Johnson at 3.
Yeah.
Kerryon Johnson. All right, I'm going to break the mold here and go with a wide receiver who I think was probably the top receiver as far as NFL status goes last year, but he was not the top receiver as far as fantasy goes. I think Moore was the top guy. But I'm going to take Calvin Ridley here. I think that he kind of showed in this offense exactly what he can do. I think Matt Ryan's still got a few years left that he can actually still be viable. Calvin Ridley, you kind of burst into the scene with a 3-touchdown game. Huge game. He had a couple ups and downs, had that middle part of the season where he didn't play quite as well. Of course, he still has Julio Jones there to compete with targets, but I think in this offense, Calvin Ridley is still a great dynasty player for me in the long term, so give me Calvin Ridley.
I would not have taken Calvin Ridley there. I would not have taken him with any of my next 2 or 3 picks. I got him. I don't even know if I take him in the first round.
Wow.
On a redraft.
Why do you say that?
I think that Julio Jones still has at least another year or 2 left. Ridley couldn't beat. Well, I value the first 2 or 3 years pretty highly when it comes to drafting rookies because I want to win now at all times, and I don't pretend like I can predict what the NFL is going to look like in 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of turnover, and I think Ridley's ceiling is like a wide receiver 2, and I think that there are receivers in this draft class that have higher ceilings than him, and that's what I'm going to go after.
All right, so you're up next. So who do you got?
Well, I'm still taking running backs, and at this point, oh man, this is tough. But actually, I'm gonna pivot completely. I'm gonna take Baker Mayfield because this is dynasty, and
damn,
I need a quarterback, and it's hard to find quarterbacks in dynasty because literally all of them are rostered. And I have one that I think is a franchise quarterback. I thought he was the best quarterback coming into the class last year. I thought he was worthy of the first overall pick. The Browns got it right, and he's going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback as early as 2020. As soon as the guys go away, Breeze, Ben. No, not Ben. Ben is not in there. Breeze, Brady.
Yep.
Brady's not top 10 either. All right, so he's already going to be there. He's on his way.
He's on his way
I
already.
want Mayfield on my team.
Yeah, good stuff there. I like that. I like that pick. Definitely out off the track there. All right, Rick. So you got the next pick. Who you taking? I heard you say "damn it," so you must have been having Mayfield.
I got him twice.
Yeah, I've been double sniped here. So I really want to go Geis, even though I already picked him. I'm trying to think of any reason why I would go anywhere else. But the fact is, if you can get a franchise back in this stage of the game, you have to do it. There's no better options in Washington. Chris Thompson is so limited and has got an injury history longer than a CVS receipt. And other than that, there's really nobody touching the rock. So if Darius Geis can come in and be 300 touch guy, he is the savior of a team that was leading the NFC East first half of the season, looking really good with a very strong defense. He is a position to be in a lot of positive game script games. I just can't get away from his upside.
All right.
Even with the injuries, I fully endorse that pick.
Yep, I agree. I love that pick as well. I actually tried to buy low on him in my dynasty league, and the guy was not having it. So I love that pick there. All right, so I'm going to go with the guy that was not drafted last year in fantasy or in the regular NFL and ended up having a Pro Bowl season. And, of course, that's Philip Lindsay. Obviously, one of the best rookie running backs that we've seen in a long time. Did make the Pro Bowl. We kind of questioned a little bit, earlier in the podcast about his durability. But at this point in the draft for a dynasty guy, even if he ends up being a sort of Darren Sproles-ish kind of running back for his career, I still love that at this point. So I play in PPR leagues. I think he'll be great for that. So give me Philip Lindsay. All right, Jason, what you got next?
This pick is tough for me because there's one running back I think that's left worth drafting, and I don't know if I want him or if I want to go with the receiver with the highest upside. So I think I'm going to go the receiver here. I'm going to take Cortland Sutton.
Ooh,
because he has
now it's just fun.
He has alpha wide receiver 1 traits, just like I talked about Kenny Golladay. And I know the quarterback situation in Denver isn't great, so this is more of a hopefully 2 to 3 years down the line pick. They figure it out. But he's number 1 next year. I think Manny Sanders is gone. We already saw Demaryius Thomas leave. I think that the duo of Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton is going to be real quality. And I like Sutton long term. I like him this year to be possibly a wide receiver too.
I love that call. I almost went with Sutton in my first receiver pick there when I took Ridley. It was between Ridley and Sutton. I think Sutton has probably got the better long-term, sort of outlook because he is that, red zone threat. He's the big receiver there in Denver. He's going to be the number 1. I think he's got a very good track to be the number 1. So love that pick at Sutton there. All right, Rick, what you got next?
I'm torn between 2 guys because I got my guy for 12, and I think I can wait. I don't think I'm going to get sniped by a third time. So I have 2 options here, and my hindsight is not great on this, but what was the Seahawks' biggest criticism in their playoff loss?
They ran the ball
too much. And they used a first-round pick on a running back last year. So just
imagine give him the ball.
Imagine if those touches just went to Rashad Penny instead, and we can figure out what kind of asset he is. And I'm picking in the bottom of the first round, and I can get a running back for a team that runs the ball too much. I'm very... listen, this is an upside play because his downside is kick returns or, healthy scratch. But I like his talent enough. I want to say screw it and just take the other guy. But again, the cornerstone running back, you can't understate just how important that can be. And you want the most productive guys now. You're right. You want to win now. And a running back is so good that you can get him, use him up, and then still ship him for a sell high because the window's 2 to 3 years. And Penny touched the ball 50 times this year. So he's pretty much still a rookie heading into next season. So all things considered, end of the first round, not any good running backs left. Oh, it hurts, but I'm going to take him.
All right. Good stuff there. I love that pick.
Is it good stuff? I don't know.
When you're going through your rant there, at one point when you got kind of high pitched, if I would have closed my eyes, I could have imagined you sounding just like Mark Wahlberg. I'm going to have to go back and rewind this podcast.
Say hi to your mother for me.
There you go. Perfect stuff. Jason, I heard you kind of chime in there. What do you have to say about that pick?
Rashad Penny in real life has to be one of the dumbest draft picks in NFL history. I mean, the merits of spending a first-round draft pick on a running back aside, you're going to spend a first-round pick on a running back and not play him? Because you think Chris Carson's better?
Yeah, that's
How
crazy.
do you, one, think Chris Carson's better than Rashad Penny, and two, run the ball when you have Russell Wilson playing quarterback?
The same franchise that gave Matt Flynn a bunch of money and then turned to Russell Wilson. Never forget.
In the same season.
They figured out how to do that. They were smart enough to know, well, Russell Wilson's just better. Let's put him on the field. But they can't figure out to, A, let Russell Wilson throw, or B, at least have the best running back out there. I hate Pete Carroll. I think he's a terrible coach.
Only throw inside the 3.
Exactly.
That's where you should run.
I'm crying.
Good stuff. All right, so I am up next. And since we are doing a hindsight draft, I'm going to go with a hindsight pick based on what has kind of happened over the past few weeks with Antonio Brown. I think that, like I said, Antonio Brown is not going to be in Pittsburgh next year. So if he's not going to be there, I think Juju steps into the number 1 role, and the number 2 role goes to Mr. James Washington. I think if you were to just take these guys, these receivers, and line them up, I think Washington has the best skill set out of most of the receivers. I think the only one that I think I would take a little bit higher is obviously Ridley, who I drafted earlier. But James Washington is just an awesome receiver. He's going to be playing in an offense that passes the ball more than anybody else. I think I wrote an article in the Steelers passed the ball 45 times more than the team in second place, which is basically a full game more worth of pass attempts for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who do run the ball as well. So it's kind of crazy to think that they have led the league in passes, and they still got James Conner and Samuels back there at running the ball. So give me all the James Washington shares possibly I could possibly have this year.
Love that pick.
Good stuff. That was my other guy that I couldn't decide between.
On my next pick, I'm torn between a whole bunch of guys, and I think I'm forced. My hand is being forced by you guys not taking him from me. I have no choice. I have to take Sony Michel. I don't want to, because I don't trust Patriots running backs, and I think that the floor is gonna fall out on that Patriots team very soon.
Yep.
But even if they have one more year left, Michel was drafted in the first round, which is something they never do. He's going to be the guy. He'll at least get goal line carries, and he can be like what Carlos Hyde was in his last year with the 49ers, minus all the receptions, something like that. I'm fine with that at this pick. Plus, he's perceived value, so I can always trade him.
Yeah, that's a good call. I like that Sony Michel pick there. Actually, I didn't really forget about him, but I actually own him in Dynasty, and I kind of hated having him this year because you didn't know which week to start him. You're like, is this a James White week? Is this a Sony Michel week? You never knew when to play him. So it's kind of tough to draft him, and he kind of pissed me off this year. But I think that at this pick, he's a great value. I think he was the top 6 pick originally, so getting him at this pick is definitely a great value. All right, Rick, what you got for your last pick in the first round?
Let's close out this first round with some style, right? Now, I know I'm not a big first-round quarterback guy, but it's a rookie draft, and a lot of the guys I like are off the board. But what about if you could get a quarterback with rushing upside, right? Wouldn't that make things better? Well, what about if you got a guy with so much rushing upside that the passing was almost secondary to his rushing upside? Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. You guys know exactly who I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
It's Josh Allen.
Definitely.
I knew you were going to say Josh
quarterbacks
Allen.
in the history of football. With
a
laser rocket arm to complement. He can only grow in this offense that Robert Foster didn't play in the first half of the season. He is as good a red zone threat as Cam Newton. It's not debatable. The guy's got long strides. Buffalo's going to be playing good defense and running the ball with Josh Allen for years to come. if you thought about Lamar Jackson, it's Lamar Jackson with 70-yard passing touchdown upside. That's what it is.
Yep.
If teams, I think all he has to do is develop as a passer. He's very dangerous. And if you're going to add 90 rushing yards and a touchdown to his stat line each game, forget Baker. You can outscore Baker Mayfield with that kind of line.
Josh Allen led the league in off-target throws this year. He has no idea where the ball is going. I mean,
it's called positive regression, Cats. Ever heard of it?
I'm talking about throws that are 10 yards or closer to the line of scrimmage. You can't hit wide open receivers in the flat.
Hey, if you can't hit the broadside, you build a bigger barn. You know what I'm saying?
He had Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah, Kelvin Benjamin.
I said it's a really metaphor. I don't mean an actual barn on the field. An actual immobile structure. It's a metaphor, okay?
Good stuff, guys. Good stuff. I love it. All right, Rick. So we're actually at the turn here. So you're going to go ahead and draft the first pick in the second round. Who you got, Rick?
We're only doing 12. How many rounds are we doing?
I was going to do 2 rounds, but I think we're running a little long. I was thinking about, should we just skip it and go to our bold predictions here?
Let's roll with the bold predictions.
All right, Dante Pettis. Let's go to bold predictions.
Bold predictions. All right, go ahead, Rick. Who you got for your first bold prediction?
My bold prediction is that you have seen the mountaintop, the apex of what Minnesota Viking wide receivers look like. This was one of the biggest debates heading into the 2018 season. You only get one, Thielen or Diggs, Thielen or Diggs, Thielen or Diggs. And for the first half of the season, both were pretty much viable. Then what happened? DeFilippo got ousted, and the regime change was swift. Mike Zimmer doesn't involve himself into the offensive meeting room and is proud of that fact. But when his teams doesn't run the ball enough, he looks down the nose of his glasses with the fury of a divorced dad, right? So the Dalvin Cook will be a feature next year. The Vikings will lean on the run more because guess what? Kirk Cousins is overpaid and wildly mediocre. So the more they want to run the ball, that offensive line needs to improve. And I think that we've just seen as good as Thielen and Diggs can be. Not to mention, you can't pay both long term. Thielen's on the best contract in football. And what I don't like most about Thielen is he relies very much on quick twitch ability. And he got banged up a couple times this year. And once he came back, tried to play a little hurt, he was just about useless. So I think you're going to see a slow shift in the way the Vikings move the football. And that's to the detriment of their 2-star receivers.
And the detriment of their team, because if you're running instead of passing, you're doing it wrong.
What are you going to do? You got Rhett Ellison and Kyle Rudolph. You got to run behind those horses, okay?
Yeah, I watched way too many times when the Vikings were like 3rd and 1, even 2nd and 1, and they're throwing the ball, and they got Dalvin Cook in the backfield. That didn't make sense to me at all. I agree. I think they need to run the ball a little bit more, and I think Dalvin Cook could definitely be a good one there. All right, Jason, what you got for your first bold prediction?
I'm going to say, I know we touched on it before a little bit, but I got to go with my boy David Johnson. He is going to return to being a top 5 fantasy running back. The resurgence is coming. Like I don't want to rehash the whole thing we said earlier, the RB12 floor. We saw his floor. This was his absolute floor. It cannot possibly be worse. I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to inject some of that young college type style into the offense. Get the ball to David Johnson in space. He's a super athlete. Just get him the ball in space. Please run a toss once. Give him something.
Exactly.
Run him out of the slot. He can do it all. He's a wide receiver playing running back. Let
me ask you this. Let's just say we're doing a draft right now, redraft. Where are you taking David Johnson? You can pick him anywhere you want. Where are you taking him?
Probably in the early to mid second round. At this point, I'm going with the top 5 picks for me are going to be all running backs. We know who they are. And after that, I'm taking receivers that I know I can trust because I looked at my rankings from last year, and what I noticed is that the wide receivers I had ranked top 12, pretty much all of them were right around where I had them ranked. They finished as top 12 receivers for the most part. The running backs, not as much. A lot of guys missed, and they missed by a lot more. Yeah. I know it's balancing the advantage of having an elite running back versus the safety of taking an elite wide receiver. I'm going to opt to actually be safe because I got burned by Leonard Fournette too many times this year.
All right, good stuff there. I love it. All right, so I'm going to take one of mine out of my article that I wrote for Fantasy Pros just recently that got kind of a lot of pub on Twitter. It's actually a twofold bold prediction. So the first part of this prediction is Le'Veon Bell signs with the New York Jets, which is the first bold part of that prediction. But he finishes outside of the top 10 in running backs this year. And I think that becomes... I think Le'Veon Bell right now plays, in Pittsburgh, played behind the best offensive line of football. He had the best receiver in football. He had a quarterback that knew how to orchestrate the offense to move the ball. And all of that sort of translated to him being the number one running back in the NFL. He goes to New York. Not that they're a horrible team. They're not the Pittsburgh Steelers. Offensive line is not quite as good. Quarterback's not quite as good. As good as Robbie Anderson is, he's not Antonio Brown. He's not even Juju Smith-Schuster. So I think Le'Veon Bell finishes outside the top 10 running backs and signs with the New York Jets as well.
I like that. I like that prediction. I think that he benefited a lot in Pittsburgh. The way they ran the offense was, we have this guy named Le'Veon Bell. We have this guy named Antonio Brown. They're getting the ball in every play. Go stop it.
Yeah.
Whereas other teams are like, you know what we'll do? We'll trick him and we'll give the ball to Elijah McGuire. Because that'll trick him. And Le'Veon's not going to get the volume and the deliberate usage in the passing game like he did in Pittsburgh. It's going to be hard for him to find a situation that's going to be as good as what he had.
Agreed, 100%.
Listen, if anyone is able to identify the best running back on their roster and use them to maximum effectiveness, it's Adam Gase, okay? And every fantasy owner knows this, so I'm not worried at all.
Yeah, tongue-in-cheek there, tongue-in-cheek. Good stuff, Rick. All right, let's stay with you, Rick. What you got for your bold prediction number 2?
Let's stay with gangrene, and we touched on this a little bit before, but I think Robbie Anderson has a good chance to finish as at least a wide receiver 2 next year. I watched a good amount of Jets football. I'm on the East Coast, you dig. The Jets had a very simple strategy. They were going to throw 50-yard bombs to Robbie Anderson, and if he caught it, they were going to win the game, and if he didn't, they were going to lose the game. This strategy worked week 1 against the Lions, and we fell in love with Sam Darnold, and then it proceeded to not work for like 2 months straight. Then Anderson got hurt. He came back towards the end of the season. We talked about how he was a target monster, but he had that the Jet offense had this brutal mid-season stretch where all the receivers were hurt, their line started to fall apart, and Darnold got banged up. And then there was no real point in bringing him back banged up when they couldn't really get any offense moving. But when Anderson is healthy, he's a legitimate field stretcher that nobody can cover. So there's this little dynamic in the Jets offense that any single play they can drop a 60-yard touchdown on you. And I think that's really important moving forward. Every team needs a guy like that, whether it be Deshaun Jackson or Tyreek Hill. Robbie Anderson really is that guy, and he has the height to win in the air. He's just not a red zone threat, but his touchdowns can come up. His air yards, like we said, are through the roof. So it's only a matter of time before those start dropping. And Adam Gase doesn't have the right, he doesn't spread talent around his running back. But we saw it time again in Miami, whether it was Kenny Stills, Jakeem Grant, sometimes Devontae Parker.
Don't say Devontae Parker.
Sometimes. But Albert Wilson, when he was healthy, he knows how to get his deep, speedy, hyper athletes the ball when it matters. So I think that is something we could take away from Gase's time in Miami, even if he never had elite weapons. I mean, I think Robbie Anderson is going to be the best receiver that Adam Gase has had to work with in the last couple of years, and Sam Darnold the best quarterback. So that being said, what Anderson did the last couple weeks of the season is the type of player he is. Unlike like Derrick Henry, that's not who he is. But that end of season run, that is who Robbie Anderson is. Now, Robbie Anderson's also the guy that's ran from the cops twice in the last 2 years. So there's a lot of other things in the Robbie Anderson package that can prevent him. His biggest enemy is himself. But if all things can come together in the right way, the Jets get a couple nice pieces. Le'Veon Bell will go a long way towards this goal, but Anderson has a legitimate chance to have a blow-up year next year.
All right, good stuff. I love that call. I love that. So, Jason, what do you feel about that call? I'll go ahead and give us your bold prediction number 2 as well.
I just agree with everything he said. I was on Robbie Anderson before. I'm going to be targeting him big time this year, possibly as high as even maybe the 5th round.
Dang.
Let's see. Do I want to go? I got 2 more here. I want to go with Denver. Deshaun Hamilton, top 24 receiver next year.
Wow.
I was looking at very, very early ADPs. He's not even being drafted right now. I know that obviously it's January, and that literally means nothing. But the fact that he's not even being considered, I mean, really? This is a player that really came on at the end of the year. He was seeing something like 7, 8 targets a game. Manny Sanders, if he's healthy for next year, which is a huge if, I don't think he's going to be there. I really don't. He's going to be 32, 33.
Yep. And he's got a big contract coming too.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. When they drafted Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton, I expected that, okay, they are drafting these guys to be their starting receivers next year, and then the old guard of Manny and Demaryius that have been there for years, they're going to go away. If Deshaun Hamilton is the number 2, even with Case Keenum, he can be a wide receiver too, because I think he's that talented.
Yeah, that's a good call. I love that call, and I agree. I think Hamilton not being drafted is crazy to me, because in a PPR league, I mean, he was getting more targets than Sutton was, and I had to imagine Sutton's being drafted right now, so Hamilton should definitely be on that draft list. Sanders probably won't be healthy for the beginning of the season, and he's an older receiver. He may not be healthy again ever. This may have taken away his career basically, and I love it. I love it. Hamilton is a great receiver.
After Sanders went down, Hamilton's target count, final 4 games, 9, 12, 9, 8.
Yep, that's like Julian Edelman's type style right there. I mean, he's getting a ton of targets. You can't pass that up. Agree, 100% there. All right, so my next bold prediction here is going to be is the Raiders. They move on from Derek Carr.
Woo!
And Derek Carr lands in Cincinnati as the Andy Dalton replacement, but with better weapons around him, still finishes outside the top 15 for quarterbacks.
Because he's not good.
He's just not good. Agreed. I think this year was an outlier. I think he basically was forced to pass because they couldn't run the ball very well. I think his volume kind of pushed him up a little bit, and he still finished outside the top 15. So Derek Carr, to me, is just not a good quarterback. I think that he does land in Cincinnati or somewhere that he's sort of the replacement for somebody else that wasn't very good. And I still think he's not very good wherever he goes. So Derek Carr, for me, is just outside the top 15 no matter where he lands. All right, guys.
I like that.
All right, guys. We are up against the clock here. We are at 1 hour and 10 minutes, so we're a little bit over here. I appreciate both of you coming on tonight. This has been a great podcast. Definitely a good way to launch the first Dynasty podcast for the season. I appreciate you both coming on. Let's just go around the table here and get your Twitter handles and where we can follow you at, where we can find you at, if you write, if you podcast, whatever. Rick, we'll go to you first.
All right. It's at the Rick Rosen on Twitter. And I know you plugged the check down, but that was our live Sunday show. What we're really working with is Boom DFS, a unique daily fantasy sports game. I'm doing social media and daily content for them at Boom DFS, Boom Fantasy in the App Store. It's a dope game and it's legal in 39 states. You should be about it. $1 million contest for every slate and every single game slates for every NFL game. What do you say?
Great stuff.
I hadn't heard of that. I might check that out myself.
Oh, hit me up. I'll give you a free entry.
All right, good
Would
stuff.
love to.
Good stuff. All right, Jason, where can we find you at?
Find me on Twitter at JasonCats13, and I write for a bunch of websites, rotoballer.com, fftoday.com, fantasypros.com, and you can find some stuff on fantasyfootballmetrics.net. So I'm all over the place here.
All over the place. And Rick, did you give your Twitter handle? I don't remember you giving us a Twitter handle.
At the Rick Rosen, baby.
At the Rick Rosen. All right, good stuff.
Yeah, the baby, I just added that. It's not part of the handle.
There's going to be a spoof account now. There's going to be a spoof account at the Rick Rosen baby.
Put it on a shirt.
All right, for Rick, for Jason, I'm Jeff. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. That's a wrap, guys.
Salud.
Take care.